Hello, friends. Brian Tinsman here, and welcome back to Think Outside the Box with Pounce. I just got back from a family trip to Northern California. For years, I've heard and told people that Loudoun County is sort of like the Napa Valley of the East or the Silicon Valley of the East. Now, after actually visiting those places, I can tell you, it's not quite the same. Sure, the weather's different, cooler, drier than Virginia in August, but it's more than that. It's the people. Part of what makes Loudoun County special is that despite having more than 440,000 residents, it still feels like a hometown, and that's pretty rare. Most people here aren't originally from Loudoun, but they chose to be here, and that choice shapes the way that they treat each other. This is not a knock on the West Coast. Californians are wonderful, but there's a distinctly different feeling when you're back within the friendly confines of Loudoun County. And let's be honest, most people come here for work. This truly is a land of opportunity, whether you're in high tech, winemaking, or the creative space like I am. Even compared to neighboring counties, Loudoun stands out for its economic vitality. I know this firsthand. I'm originally from Delaware and came to Northern Virginia to attend Marymount University in Arlington. I first came to Loudoun County as a marketing intern for what is now the Washington Commanders, working out of the team's facilities in Ashburn, back before One Loudoun had broken ground or before Gloucester Parkway connected through, and when I had to park in a field and walk through some trees to get to their practice facility during training camp. Things have changed quite a bit. I met my future wife there, I met my future business partner there, and I made friends and professional connections that have shaped my life ever since. I left Loudoun County briefly to work in D.C., but I recognized quickly that this was an outstanding place not only to work, but to buy a home and to raise a family. Came back to work in economic development for 6 years before starting POUNCE Solutions, so I could work more closely with the businesses and nonprofits that weave together the beautiful tapestry of opportunity in Loudoun County. I want others to do the same, which is why I've gotten involved with the National Workforce Development Day on September 17th, right in the middle of National Workforce Development Month. That effort is being championed locally by my friend Daisy Saulls. Her own career path is anything but linear. She's been the executive director for the Robert Duvall Foundation, a wedding photographer, and has worked in the data center industry. Now, as part of PATHIRED, she works across industries, employers, and work settings, giving her a uniquely well-rounded perspective on what the next generation of workers, career switchers, and industry leaders need, and how they can work together to create more opportunity for everyone. I really enjoyed my conversation with Daisy, and I think you will too. If you're a business, nonprofit, or any other type of organization, I encourage you to take the pledge and get involved with National Workforce Development Day at nationalworkforcedevelopmentday.com. Here's Daisy. All right, my name is Brian Tinsman, and I am so happy to be joined with Daisy Saulls today. Daisy is, of course, the president of PATHIRED and is the originator of National Workforce Development Day, which will be coming up in a few months, and we're very excited to bring together all kinds of partners in the workforce development space.
Hey, Brian, it's definitely interesting being in the hot seat for a change, but I appreciate the opportunity. So I got started in workforce development before I even knew that it was workforce development. I got started when I was the executive director for the Robert Duvall Children's Fund, and our mission there was really to empower and advocate for organizations that were really focused on giving opportunities to women and children and families around the world, right? In some of the most underrepresented communities around the world, severely impoverished communities. And some of the things that I saw there were just so incredible. Some of the work that's being done globally has really just made me who I am, right? Being able to see from a global perspective how programs can change the trajectory of not just one person's life, but entire family lines and communities in general, right? So a lot of those programs really focused on skills training. It focused on giving people and believing in people, giving them opportunities and believing that they were going to make amazing things with those opportunities, right? And so, my own career path has taken a lot of different turns. I've done nonprofit, and then from there I was in healthcare for a little while, and then I switched over to data centers, and that switch from nonprofit to data centers was pretty drastic because I have zero skill sets, zero experience when it comes to data centers. I had no idea how the internet even worked. And so, to be honest, I wasn't even going to apply for the position that I received until probably the 15th time I saw the job posting. Because I thought, gosh, this sounds so boring. I'm like, there's nothing about this that makes me excited. And so I applied just, honestly, just to get some practice if I got the interview. And then what was really surprising is that once I got the interview, which was right around February of 2020. So that's, kind of
Good timing, right?
right. Yeah, it starts to paint this picture. I obviously knew what was going on. I was watching what's going on with COVID around the world, and it was just the start of everything. And I got the job, honestly, I got the job probably the day before the shutdown in Virginia. And I felt so lucky that I had joined that company and that organization because they honestly, for one reason, one, not only that they really blow me away during the interview process, but I was really fascinated by how many skill sets they could use in the data center industry, and how many of my skill sets they could use in the data center industry, even coming from nonprofit and having even a background in wedding photography, for example. So I took the job because they were one of the only companies that had a plan. And while COVID was new for everyone, being mission critical and having to run 24 hours a day was not new to them. And that means running through hurricanes and natural disasters and civil unrest, right? And so they kind of had that down in terms of how they were going to move forward in very uncertain times. And so that to me presented job stability. And so I took that job not expecting that I was going to be continuing my work with workforce development. And probably 6 months in, we became very aware that the demand for data centers was increasing at a rate that the talent could not keep up with, right? So we just simply don't have the talent for that. And so me being the person that loves, to solve challenges and problems, I thought, we could probably utilize some of the ideas that I've seen done globally on a global scale to bring in more talent and develop more talent, especially because there's entire populations of individuals who are really hungry for opportunities in any career field, right? And this one is so interesting because it really, whatever your skill sets are, there's a place for them, right? So if you are into marketing, or if you want to be an engineer or technician or a project manager, there's really a space for you in that field. And so we had some really great success developing a pilot program that turned into just a much larger program that scaled to 4 different regions within its first, I would say, 2 years, with a really high conversion rate. And it was really based on the sort of the focus that, if you give the right people an opportunity, they're going to make good on that opportunity. They're going to show up. They're going to really excel when you're walking next to them and when they have people that they know believe in them and are investing resources into them. That creates also, sort of that connection with the brand or with the company. And so that helps with retention. And so because of that, and because of my previous work there, I was asked to consult on various different workforce development initiatives, and I made the jump into consulting and now PATHIRED, our nonprofit. What I found was that the community itself started reaching out more because they wanted to know, how do they get more involved with hiring organizations? So you have the nonprofits that are saying, hey, I'm hearing that there's this worker shortage in many, many industries. We have people. We have people who are interested in having these career pathways. We don't know what the formula is to get them hired. We can train them, but we need those business partners to come to the table and say, we will take a look at those resumes. We're going to hire. And then, you've got a lot of, state-run and county-run programs that are phenomenal. They've had grants available for internships, you have apprenticeship programs, you have all kinds of different resources available to employers so that the economic or the cost burden doesn't fall all on them, right? And so there's a lot of these programs that really were underutilized by employers. And so the thought for National Workforce Development Day really came from this idea that we just need to have a meeting point, a collaboration point, right? And a place where we can really highlight all of the different resources that are available, not just to the community, but to employers and to associations, and to really just, individuals who are seeking careers, and educational institutions that are trying to promote career pathways to their students, right? So having this one day really is sort of that rallying point where you can showcase everything that you're offering and or what you're looking for. And so since September is already Workforce Development Month, it makes it that much better to have one day where you're talking about the entire month, right? You're talking about all of the activity that's happening in this month. And if you have one day where you have a campaign and you're using the hashtag, Workforce Day 25, you can post, hey, here's how we're celebrating workforce development. We are, highlighting the fact that we have grants, for students to be able to, go to school and we pay for a living wage, for their living expenses, right? Or we will offer, free transportation to anyone that doesn't have transportation so that they can go to, the apprenticeship program, right? Just to have one spot or one day where it's really the main focus is just to get everyone looking at workforce development and the resources that are available, I think is incredibly important, especially this year, right? Because I think it's going to be really tough for a lot of people to adjust to a lot of the changes that are coming in so rapidly. I think it's very easy, myself included, to get sort of overwhelmed by it and focus on what's not going to move forward, right? When there are so many other things that are moving forward, and we're, as Americans, very resilient, very innovative. And so maybe that alleviates a little bit of the pressure, right? Knowing that there's a lot of people out there who have really wonderful programs who are not just willing to step up right now, but have been willing to step up and have been stepping up for a long time. And so really National Workforce Development Day is that, call to action. It's tell us what you have, the resources, and tell us what you need, right? And so our community contributors are just that. They're participating by sharing all of the great work that they're doing and just highlighting some of the really, impactful initiatives that are happening around the country.
This episode of Think Outside the Box with Pounce is brought to you by Family Trips. It's like taking a vacation, but it has the opposite effect. You come back tired, frazzled, and debating whether to unpack or just burn everything. You've spent 7 days living out of a suitcase, negotiating over bathroom time, and trying to keep your jet-lagged toddler from going feral. Nothing says quality family time like telling your kids it's illegal to eat snacks in a rental car and then stress eating a treat in the front seat. Don't know how to use up that vacation time? Try a family trip today. I love that. So anyone listening right now, that is September 17th, 2025 is the first ever National Workforce Development Day, right in the middle of National Workforce Development Month. And it sounds like there are some amazing partners that are already stepping up and coming to the table. I think one of the things about workforce development that might be misunderstood is that people kind of see it through the lens that they're in, the lane that they're in. So if you are an employee in a company, you see it as sort of your pathway through a career. But it's much bigger than that. One of the ways in which I get to work with you is through Loudoun Education Foundation, that there's such a strong K through 12 component of this. It's everything from the community colleges, the four-year institutions, the training and certificate programs. There's so many community partners, there's nonprofits, there's government, there's everything that has to kind of come together because, and I'm going to throw a few stats at you. This is a big problem. I was reading over some of the materials that you had pulled together, and we're already looking at 75% of U.S. employers are already facing talent shortages. There's some other ones in here about 87% of U.S. executives report current or anticipated skill gaps in their workforce, that there are, 92% of jobs require at least basic digital skills, and yet 1/3 of all U.S. workers don't have them. These are apocalyptic numbers, and we never want to dwell on the negativity of it, but that there really is a very serious demand where it's going to require collaboration among all of those three. So where do you see sort of best case scenario? How do the partners all come to the table together?
Honestly, I really think it requires non-traditional view of how we do workforce development, right? So you mentioned earlier, depending on who you're asking, it's going to mean different things, right? And none of it is wrong, right? So workforce development is retention. The cost to an organization when an employee leaves, especially in a space that's already, short of talent, right, is very expensive. If you were to sit down and talk about how much overtime your other employees are having to, put in order to cover for that missing person, the training that's required, the orientation that's required, the recruiter's time. How long does it take a recruiter to actually find the right person to take on that position? It has a number, a person who says that, workforce development is retention and finding ways to have employees stay longer with an organization, or how do you build that bench and have people promoted within their own organization? That's not wrong. That's absolutely correct. There's the Aspen Institute. I was listening to a discussion with them, and somebody had mentioned that retention is the new recruiting, because it is one of those like alarm bells that are going off right now. And there's plenty of articles that have been talking about that, but it's also the career transitioners, right? Or people who have lost their jobs and are now trying to pivot and sort of figure out what it is that they're going to do next, and which industries are going to be the most stable moving forward. And so you had mentioned, earlier about the gap between digital skills, right? So the US population does not have the basic digital skills that are needed right now. Let's just think about what that's going to look like in 5 years once we've fully adopted to AI, right? And so the new requirements is not even just on the folks that don't have the basic digital skill sets, but also your current employees that have the basic, but they may not have the training to maintain those new systems that organizations are going to be adapting. And listen, that's going to be everything. And so that's also concerning in terms of the workforce and what that's shaping up to be. That's, I think, why workforce development is on top of mind for everyone, right? Because it means retention, it means upskilling, it means reskilling. It also means marketing. You and I have talked about this before. It means, how do you promote these career pathways to the larger community that may not be aware of them or may not see themselves in it because they don't understand what it's about, and they've maybe never had any interaction with it. And also equally important is, how do you get the younger generation interested in these career pathways, and how do you bring their parents alongside of it, right? A lot of these career pathways are very lucrative and they don't require a 4-year education. Construction and manufacturing, and we need electricians, we need plumbers, and these are really well-paying jobs. They're really well-paying careers. They're not just jobs, they're careers. And healthcare is not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But we need people in healthcare, and so there's just a lot of really great opportunities out there. So while the numbers are pretty overwhelming and apocalyptic, as you called it, again, the focus of National Workforce Development Day really is to just showcase that we are doing a lot of really great work. I think that there's this misconception from some people, not all people, that the newer generation just doesn't want to work, right? And that couldn't be further from the truth. I think that they just have a different approach to work. I think, what I've heard a lot of people tell me that they're hearing from their kids, their own kids are telling them this, and I've heard it from students as well, is that they're looking for more out of their workplace than I think, they've seen, or at least they understand, right? And so, one person told his father, well, I don't want to sit behind a desk for 12 hours a day, just talking, and then another person, is like, well, I want to have a life. I want work-life balance. I don't want to work. I don't want to drive 2 hours to get to work every single day and then back another 2 hours. And then there's a lot of really great questions when I've talked to students that come in for career days, and they're asking, what do your social programs look like? What are you doing for the community around you? What are you doing when it comes to sustainability? What are you doing when it comes to employee well-being? How are you taking care of these things? And so I think what I'm learning from the newer generation is that what they're doing is stepping up and saying, we want to have work-life balance. We want to do something that we feel is making an impact, right? We want to be able to have livable wages, because a lot of them are saying, well, gosh, I'm going to work all these hours and I still won't ever be able to afford to buy a house because everything's so expensive, right? And so I think that it's more of how we communicate with the newer generation. And I think a big piece of that is education. I think a big piece of it is answering those questions at the same time that we're presenting the career pathways that exist and what that would look like for them, 10 years down the road in terms of promotion, potential and livable wages, and how that's all going to, like, tuition reimbursement if they do want to go back to school or start school. I think that all of those things are important to talk to students about. And there's a lot of ways that people can participate. We want to make it as easy as possible and as beneficial to the person that's participating as possible, right? So this really was designed for them. This is designed to sort of be a marketing arm for their program, right? And so, if this works well, I'm hoping that, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, Workforce Development Day is that day where job seekers are saying, hey, I know on this day, there are going to be a lot of career fairs. I know that on this day, my local career resource center is going to be doing skills training. This stuff happens all the time, year round, but for it being a day, it's a great way to open that door for people who aren't aware of the resources that exist. And through marketing and through branding and just awareness, national awareness of the day, I think that's just going to amplify the work that people are doing and really giving folks an opportunity to participate however they can, whether that's using the hashtag Workforce Development 25 and sharing about existing programs or future programs, or even just talking about their own career journeys, and demystifying their career and saying, this is why I love my career. It's really neat. Here's what I do, and sharing that individually, or whether it's hosting an event or hosting a virtual job fair, or even partnering with economic development. And, if you're an organization and saying, we want to partner with economic development, and, asking them, how can we best support or be involved in some of the work that you're doing. And so there's a lot of different ways, and it just depends on the capacity that each organization has and what best suits them. And so again, ideally, that what this is down the road, this looks like a day where people just know that on this day, they're going to become a lot more aware of the resources that are available to them.